Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ITM Power PLC trading update for the year ending 30th of April 22 investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode, and we expect this meeting will last 30 minutes. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during today's meeting. However, the company review all questions submitted today and will publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and if you would give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand over to Dr. Graham Cooley, CEO. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, and thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for everybody on the call for joining. This is a trading update since the last time we reported numbers back in January. I'm going to begin, and then you're going to hear from Andy Allen, who's our Chief Financial Officer. Just a bit of positioning first of all. I'm sure most of you on the call know this already, but ITM Power is an electrolyser manufacturer. We're a PEM electrolyser manufacturer. We're located and operate out of Bessemer Park in Sheffield, which is the world's largest operational electrolyser factory. And we have a well-defined roadmap to get to 5 gigawatts per annum by the end of 2024. And we've spent now a number of years building our skills and experience in the company and delivering on electrolyser projects. So highlights then and progress in the period. So work in progress is currently 75 megawatts. That is those electrolyser projects which are already signed and are already going through the factories. It's up 74% year on year. The backlog stands at a record of 755 megawatts, which is up 160%. This increase in the backlog has been very well telegraphed. We made an announcement about the creation of Motive, a joint venture with Vitol, which includes 240 megawatts of preferred supplier status. And that announcement constitutes all of the increase in the backlog since January. We have established ITM Power Service in Germany with a new facility. I'm going to tell you more about that. And that was established with our first support from the German government, 2 million euros support from the German government, an important new endorsement for us from a government in Europe. We also received 9.3 million from the UK government to support our testing and validation of the 5 megawatt module called the GEP. And we've made significant progress on the development of the 2 megawatt modules called MEP, moving from MEP 1.0 to MEP 2.0, and also the GEP stack platform. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about that as we go along. So the backlog then stands at 755 megawatts. So the backlog is the total of work in progress, that's signed contracts, those contracts in the final stages of negotiation, of which there are 342 megawatts, and preferred supplier status with 2 major blue chip companies, one SNAM and the other one Vitol, via our joint venture with Vitol called Motive. And you'll see that in the period, it is the preferred supplier status that has increased. Actually, if you go back to the period before, it was in the final stages of negotiation that had increased, and the preferred supplier status has remained the same. And you'll see those 2 categories of backlog leapfrog each other as we go up in backlog quantity. But what you are seeing is steady growth in work in progress. So the process for us is to move from preferred supplier status through to negotiation, from negotiation into work in progress. And that's what we're doing commercially and with our sales team. In terms of the macro picture then, there have been some very significant announcements in the macro market, and particularly with regards to policy. So you will note a very important reaction in the EU and the UK to the Ukrainian crisis. The EU had a target for green hydrogen, an explicit electrolyser target of 80 gigawatts of electrolyzers by 2030. That's in the next 8 years. That 80 gigawatts has now increased to 200 gigawatts, and that's in the next 8 years. That calls for 20 million metric tons of green hydrogen per year to replace industrial hydrogen, which uses natural gas as its feedstock. And clearly the reason for that is to reduce Europe's dependence on Russian gas. A parallel announcement came from the UK government. UK government had a target of 5 gigawatts of clean hydrogen, which included blue and green hydrogen. They've doubled that to 10 gigawatts with an explicit electrolyser target of 5 gigawatts by 2030. So that's in 8 years. And in the UK strategy, it also calls for a significant UK content, which positions ITM Power well in the market. Why has all of this happened? Well, it's happened because of the incredible increase in the price of natural gas, and also the increase in the commodities volatility. So over the last year, we have seen green hydrogen achieve parity with grey industrial hydrogen, that is hydrogen made using natural gas. And the world uses 70 million tonnes of grey industrial hydrogen. So it's a massive market, and we have achieved parity, but also can demonstrate incredibly low volatility, because if you connect an electrolyser via a power purchase agreement to renewable power, you get zero volatility. You also get fuel security, because you're connecting to a capital asset located in country. So it gets you around the geopolitics of importing natural gas. And it's also net zero. So you avoid carbon pricing, which is running right now. The ETS at the moment is running at between 60 and 100 euros per metric ton CO2, which adds between $0.50 and $1 per kilogram to the price of hydrogen. So a move by the EU to achieve an additional 16 million metric tons of green hydrogen, making a total of 20 million metric tons of green hydrogen. Just to size that for you, that's the amount of industrial hydrogen that's used in the entire production of methanol worldwide, which is the feedstock for all of chemistry. So it's a massive amount of equipment, 200 gigawatts. Repower EU then not only calls for significant amount of green hydrogen, but also a massive amount of new renewables. Actually 150 gigawatts of new renewables by 2030, coupled with the gigawatts target of 200 gigawatts for the installed capacity of electrolyzers. So this is all about the deployment of green hydrogen and renewable power together, both industries being mutually supportive of each other. So in terms of our products and our technology development, we've moved actually to a new MEP unit. So what you see on this diagram is MEP1, which is the 2 megawatt module that we supplied to Refine, which is now operational. And the operating pressure of those units is 20 bar. Actually, we're now delivering Leuna. And Leuna is using a 2 megawatt module, which is increased in pressure. It's operating at 30 bar. It also has increased efficiency, increased current density, and an increased overall output. And that new pressure will be transferred, the technology will be transferred to the GEP, which is a 5 megawatt module. So we are scaling, also improving manufacturing processes and manufacturability. And we will also be moving up in current density. Current density is the key metric for reducing costs of electrolyzer modules, because for a given amount of hydrogen output, you reduce the area of all of the equipment, all of the components inside the electrolyzer. So we're deploying that for the first time at Leuna. Leuna, we missed the revenue recognition. We telegraphed that very, very well in an announcement that we made a couple of months ago. And Andy's going to tell you more about the revenue recognition associated with Leuna. We've just established ITM Power Service in Germany. So we got 2 million euros from the German government to set up a spares holding, control room, and rapid response after sales support organization for supporting the rollout of electrolysis equipment in Europe. It's a facility that's 17,000 square foot, and it will support the Refine project. So that's Refine 1 and Refine 2, also Leuna, but also wider than just Germany, supporting projects in France like Po and in Norway like Yara. So important for us because it supports our customers in Europe, and it also is the first time that we have been given support from the German government. We've been positioning ourselves for delivering at scale by employing some fantastically skilled engineers and technologists. You can see the heat diagram, and you can see blue and shades of blue all the way through to grey are about delivery, production and testing, quality, after sales support, product design, procurement, HSE, project delivery, all of those very tangible, operationally orientated delivery functions. And you can see if you move from 2010 to 2022, how we've transformed the organization from an R&D organization to one delivering on product for customers. We got to 400 members of staff now, ITM. The growth in staff numbers has slowed a little bit between 2021 and 2022, but we have built a fantastic team ready to deliver at scale. Part of part of the mix of skills and staff has been about transferring some of the staff from ITM Power to the joint venture with Vitol. And as I'm sure you all know, we formed a 50-50 joint venture called Motive. Actually, Motive has in it all of the build, own and operate assets that were owned by ITM Power. And those skills then are being put to great use in now developing that build, own and operate organisation. And we were delighted to get such a high quality, world leading partner with Vitol, who not only are a very important company in the area of energy trading, but also in the area of fuels, including CNG rollout in Europe. Vitol, of course, is not the only strategic partner working with ITM, and we were delighted to add, in terms of strategic partners and customers, not only Vitol but Yara in the period. And as the company develops over the next period, you'll see further strategic partnerships emerging. And actually, we built ITM Power on having some long-term, very solid partnerships, going back to working with Shell and Linde over the last half decade. So if I can hand over to Andy now, and Andy's going to talk you through the unaudited financial results.
Thanks, Graham, and good afternoon, everybody. So, as Graham said, I'll take you through the unaudited financial results for the year ended 30th of April. The full results will be out on the 8th of August, Monday the 8th of August, so do look out for that and for more detail accompanying then. But in terms of headlines, revenue for the year was £5.5 million against £4.3 million a year ago. And we'd expected to have recognised the Leuna project revenue as part of these results, but actually that was deferred into FY23. And I've got a bit more on that in a moment. In terms of the EBITDA loss, an EBITDA loss of £36.5 million versus 21.4 a year ago. Cash burn rose to £52 million, very much in line with what we said we would be doing in Q4 21, which is starting to build a stock, build up inventory and WIP to reduce lead times for customers. And finally, the cash at the end of the year was £364 million versus 176 a year ago, and the delta there being the fundraise we did in Q4 last year. So diving into what we'd guided in terms of megawatts delivered. So on the left-hand side, you see how we built up our guidance at the start of the year. On the right-hand side, you see what actually happened. So we start with two building blocks. First, the 10 megawatts of Refine 1, which was due to be delivered in the year. And we had recognised revenue on a percentage of completion basis. So there was not too much revenue left to recognise, but that was delivered in the year. Then there's 24 megawatts around Leuna, which we expected to recognise. Now, for our standard cubes, our standard products, revenue is to be recognised at factory acceptance testing. Due to the slight delay in the Leuna project, we've worked with Linde and the end customer to try and maintain as much of the original schedule for the project as possible. So the revenue recognition has changed. We're now sending cubes out and we're sending stacks to follow to form a complete product once on site. So that revenue will be recognised in H1 2023. So that gave us our minimum expectation. And finally, we had products that we would build to stock of 17 megawatts, which gave us our maximum guidance. And what we saw in the year was, whilst we contracted much more than 17 megawatts worth of projects, that revenue will be recognised in FY23 and not part of FY22. So our megawatts delivered in the year was around 11 megawatts. In terms of other year-on-year differences, we have, as Graham points out, an increase in the skills and the workforce, and you see we have 400 employees now. The total impact year-on-year was about £7 million. And there was another impact, which was project delivery and production ramp-up of about £14 million. In terms of cash burn, product development, there was an impact of £7 million. Some of that was the skills that we brought in actually building know-how and generating IP for our products in the future. The other big cash burn impact was ongoing work in progress and inventory builds. As we set out in Q4 last year, the WIP relates to Leuna and other contracted projects, and we're also building subsystems for our standard cubes going forwards. Finally, we continue to invest in Investment Park. We spent nearly £5 million on production equipment. Part of that is creating greater efficiency in the processes we have, but also there was a case of bringing some processes in-house, which gives us more control, not only around quality, but around timeliness and making sure that we can ramp up as we need to. I'll hand back to Graham for a summary.
Thanks, Andy. Look, just a quick summary. I think it's been a period of very strong operational progress. We got to a record backlog, but that was very well telegraphed with the prior announcement of Vitol. We've established an important after-sales support facility in Germany, in the heart of Europe, and we have a very rapidly developing macro picture. Was delighted that we have successfully improved our product, that we're delivering it to Leuna, that we've invested in inventory skills and further production equipment. So that's the presentation. I'm very happy to take your questions.
Thanks, Graham. Could we start perhaps with an update from you on the second Sheffield factory at Aviation Park, and perhaps an update on the high deploy, if there's anything new to say?
Yeah, so nothing new to say really on either of those. Our plan is still in place for expanding our production. I didn't include it in the presentation because I didn't want to show the same slides over and over again, but nothing to add there really.
Is ITM Power now in a position where it needs a full-time dedicated department for sales and marketing?
Well, we already have a full-time and dedicated department for sales and marketing, headed by Andy Ellis, and we also interact very strongly with ILE, who also faces the customers. So that's already in place.
Okay. Have you ever considered developing steam electrolyzers that can use waste steam to reduce the electrical cost of hydrogen production?
Yeah, I mean, high temperature electrolysis does use steam. The problem is, where do you get renewable steam from? You can make green hydrogen using green electricity, combining the electrolyzer with renewable power. Steam requires you to raise it in a boiler, and that means it requires you to use a fuel. And if you use a fuel, the only fuel that you could use that would be net zero would be hydrogen. So you'd be burning hydrogen to make hydrogen, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, thermodynamically as well, unless you've got waste steam, you can pose the question, where do you get waste steam that's renewable? But if you've got waste steam, then it's very easy for you to imply that you have a very efficient electrolyzer. Actually, if you add in the thermodynamics of the steam, you'll find that raising steam is a very low efficiency process. It's a Carnot cycle and not an electrochemical one. So all in all, it just doesn't work.
Okay. More and more people are talking about green ammonia and green methanol. Can you explain what part an electrolyzer plays in the production of these chemicals?
Sure. So, well, ammonia first of all, and very topical for the market today, because of the announcement from CF Fertilizers this morning. But look, you make fertilizer by first producing ammonia, and then you use nitric acid to turn that into ammonium nitrate, which is a fertilizer. So you make ammonia by reacting nitrogen and hydrogen, and all of the world's hydrogen currently, or nearly all of it, is made using natural gas. So you steam reform natural gas and you make industrial hydrogen. Then you react the industrial hydrogen with nitrogen, which is extracted from the air in an air separation plant, and you react them together in a Haber-Bosch reactor, the Haber-Bosch process. Actually, Linde Engineering build full ammonia plants, and so that positions ITM Power incredibly well for removing the industrial hydrogen part and replacing it with green hydrogen, which is what we're doing in the Yara project. A consequence of the increase in gas prices, of course, is that the corresponding price of ammonia has gone up very significantly. And you may have noticed this morning an announcement from the largest, the only actually fertilizer manufacturer in the UK, that they have closed down their Ince plant, permanently closed it, and they're part loading the Billingham plant because of the cost of industrial hydrogen. Methanol is made using the syngas process. So you take natural gas and you reform it and you make carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and you react those two together. And actually renewable methanol can be made with green hydrogen and CO2 extracted from the air. And that's a genuine e-fuel.
Okay, you've been in this industry longer than Plug Power. How did you let them beat you to the first 1 gigawatt electrolyzer order?
Yeah, good question. So that project, actually, the Iceberg project, first of all, it wasn't tendered, but it is a great endorsement for very large-scale PEM electrolysis equipment. It is also a great endorsement for refueling heavy vehicles such as trucks, because that project is actually going to be connecting directly to renewable power and working with H2 Energy to fuel trucks, 15,000 trucks. So there's some work to do. So Iceberg Port needs an additional 2 gigawatt grid connection, which the project will need before it can deploy the offshore wind. And then it needs to build up the fleet of trucks. But it's a good consortium, great endorsement for some of the things ITM is doing. There'll be more gigawatt projects, and we hope that they're all competitively tendered, because that's the way it ought to be done.
Thanks. Could you just say a quick word, because there are a lot of questions on the topic, as to why you're not disclosing the tender opportunity pipeline, please?
Yeah, for very, very commercial reasons, which is that we can't give that kind of information out into the market anymore. Things have become incredibly real, and our customers and our partners don't want to see those numbers published, and I think they're right.
Do you feel that you've been disadvantaged by Brexit with respect to getting projects in the EU, and what can you do to get around that?
So look, we have a strong presence in Europe. That's part of the move for the after-sales support unit being established in Europe. What's the disadvantage of not being in Europe? Well, the amount of policy that's been developed on green hydrogen in Europe is very significant. You've got Repower EU, you've got the two new delegated acts, which are part of the new renewable energy directive, and you've also got the important projects of common interest. But all of those things are important for ITM anyway. We have partnerships with Shell, who are headquartered in the Netherlands. We've got we work with Linda, who are in Germany, with Snam, who are in Italy, and with Ørsted in Denmark. And so many of our partners now are involved in all of those projects. So I feel we positioned ourselves at ITM very well for Brexit anyway.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question before we draw to a close. Have you seen an increase in inquiries since Russia's invasion of Ukraine? And if you have, when do you expect to start seeing that feed through into the backlog numbers?
Yeah, so yes is the answer, and I think that just as important is the way that the Ukrainian crisis has driven policy. And is actually the delegated acts are basically put into place to waive the additionality and correlation requirements to define hydrogen as being green. And they are being waived until 2027 and grandfathered. And what that means is that projects that are deployed early will get that relaxed definition of green hydrogen. This is driving forwards those early projects, and you'll see those put into law in the EU in August. So I think it's the policy and the energy security policies that have emerged since the Ukrainian crisis that are really driving things forward. But a simple answer to your question is yes, we have.
That's great, Dr. Cooley. Andy, thank you very much indeed for updating investors. And thank you to all those that have submitted questions. And of course, we'll make those available to the company post today's meeting as well. Dr. Cooley, I know investor feedback is particularly important to you and to the company, and I'll shortly redirect investors to provide you with their thoughts and expectations. But I wondered if I may, before doing so, just ask you for a few closing comments.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks to everybody for coming to this update. I think we're in a period of concentrating on operations, delivering on the projects we've already got, and converting those under negotiation into work in progress. I think we're at a very, very pivotal moment in green hydrogen, and I think you'll find that the policies that have been put in place will turn pretty rapidly into orders and into additional capacity requirements for the whole electrolyzer industry. So yeah, a very exciting time.
That's great, Dr. Cooley. Andy, thank you very much indeed once again for updating investors. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for your opportunity to provide feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This won't take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ITM Power PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, and may I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon.